Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Security Awareness Forum. I am your host, George Dosu Doya, and today we dive into one of the most pressing and urgent issues facing Africa: human trafficking. Human trafficking is not just a statistic, it is the silent cry of millions, hidden in plain sight, forced into unimaginable situations. Africa, with all its beauty and potential, it is unfortunately one of the regions hit hardest by these devastating crime. Tonight, we are not just here to talk, we are here to expose, educate, and most importantly, ignite action. Our goal is to arm you with the insight and tools to recognize and help combat these growing menace. And we couldn't have more powerful lineup of experts joining us, from investigative masters to anti-trafficking warriors. Each of our guests bring real on-the-ground experience in fighting human trafficking across the continent of Africa. So buckle up for an eye-opening conversation packed with hard truth, actionable strategies, and real solutions. This isn't just a discussion, it is a movement. Now, without further ado, let me the incredible professionals on the front line of this battle. Help me welcome my guests to the studio. And I have Mr. As usual, he's our usual guest, Mr. Gome Chirambo from Zambia. You're welcome once again, Mr. Gome. Mr. Gome, I think your microphone is on mute. So if you can unmute yourself.
Sorry about that, George. Thank you so very much. Always a pleasure to be on this great program.
Okay. And then Mr. Hayford, you are also welcome. Mr. Hayford is also with an NGO organization in Ghana fighting child trafficking. Mr. Hayford, you are also welcome.
Thank you, Mr. George. Thank you very much for such an opportunity to be on a good platform like this. Thank you very much.
You're
welcome.
Thank you. You are welcome. Human trafficking is a grave violation of human rights. This global issue exploits, abuses, and enslaves individuals for profit. It impacts millions worldwide, leaving scars on individuals and community. Mr. Gomez, what is human trafficking?
Thank you so much, George. Human trafficking has quite a number of forms, particularly if we look at the African context. This is usually a situation where people are approached, engaged on pretext of getting to do something, when in actual fact, you find that they end up being used for a whole different reason. Some of the most common trafficking that we have of humans on the continent has to do with labor, sexual exploitation, and you might want to know that usually when we talk about human trafficking, I think what is usually comes to mind is cross-border or international level trafficking. But I must bring it to your attention that even intra-country, we do have trafficking, where we have people taken from rural areas or from one region of a country to another on pretext of being taken there to go and do work or school or an activity that was appealing to the trafficked. And once they get to a destination, they realize that they've been taken there for a whole different reason altogether. In brief, George, I would explain it that way.
Thank you very much. Now that you've set the tone for us to set the ball rolling, before I go to Mr. Hayford, let me quickly ask you again, Mr. Gomez, what would motivate a criminal organization to enslave, with a lack of better word, another individual?
George, thank you so much. There are many aspects, like I said, many forms, but one of the most common, and that seems to be very rampant in the African context, is sexual exploitation. And some of the common ones, young ladies are lured into going for better opportunities, job opportunities outside the country. and you have a situation, a package that a lot of them fail to refuse, where everything is being provided for. We'll get you the visa, we'll get you air ticket, and when they get to the destination, usually they become sexual slaves.
What then can we say is the root cause and a contributing factor for people to be trafficked? I'm saying this because looking at the continent of Africa, yeah, statistically, if you listen to the United Nations mentioned that the human traffickers make about $150 billion profits, okay, on yearly basis. Now, this is a booming business. And not just on the continent of Africa, even on other continents, but we focus on our discussion on our continent. Now,
Yes.
what could be the contributing factor where we have our own sisters, brothers, sons, daughters being trafficked without us identifying or knowing that they are being trafficked? What are some of the root causes of these issues? Could it be socio-economic factors? Could it be political instability? Or the fact that we want to see greener pastures elsewhere?
George, Africa has an array of reasons. We look at the fundamentals, and you've well referred to the UN statistics. And if we go delve a bit deeper into the most of the areas that are affected, parts of Africa, you find that these are war-torn, and people are running from war, are seeking asylum. In the process, a good number end up being waylaid by these traffickers. There are countries, of course, that are not at war. There are economic reasons. So you find that socioeconomic factors are quite dominant. And usually, a lot of people that end up in being trafficked are very unsuspecting. Like I say, they're exploring economic opportunities, a better life. And a friend told them, it's better when you go to this part of the world. So much is happening. And once such an individual crosses the borders, gets to those places, they'll tell them, bring your passports for safekeeping. And that is where the whole aspect begins of them being abused.
Okay, thank you. If you look at what the victims usually are exploited for, you 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 talk about sexual exploitation. You also spoke about forced labor. Now, if you look at the United Nations statistics, it's saying that another way that the victims are exploited is by harvesting their body organs.
Yes.
Now, that means that if they are taking out a kidney, you could be alive. But if you are taking out your heart, then that means death. And then, according to the United States, that is how these people are making $150 billion in a year.
Yes.
What can we do on the continent of Africa to stop these from happening?
One of the things, George, that we need to focus on is information and education. I think we have not done much as a continent to educate. Civic education is very, very important, and specifically some deliberate efforts need to be made. Go into the schools, talk to our children, go into tertiary level institutions. At times, at that level, it may be too late. Go into public community awareness, do road shows. We need to do everything that we can to sensitize our fellow Africans, because usually there is a notion by the majority of the Africans, unsuspecting Africans, that when they hear of certain parts of the world and an opportunity to travel there, all they think of, that's the best of life, that is the best world, nothing bad could happen, all they're going there is progression. So I believe we need to do a lot more and invest a lot more in educating and bringing this awareness to our continent and Africans in particular.
Thank you. Now, let me go to Mr. Hifford. Mr. Hifford, you work with a non-governmental organization which is based in Turkey. You are a representative here in Ghana for them, and you have been on the forefront of fighting these issues. Now, what is your side? What is the statistics looking like from your side? How is the fight going against human trafficking?
Thank you, Mr. George, once again. Uh, Issues about human trafficking, to be specifically the child trafficking, I will say that in Ghana here, we are not well dealt with issues like child trafficking or human trafficking because even currently as we are talking, I have cases or we have cases that we are working on it. 25 children under the age of 5 to 11 years have been trafficked from central region to the Brong-Ahafo. So as an organization, we are doing all our possible best to fight against the human traffic or the child trafficking. But I think the government also have to do more. The law enforcement agency have to, strengthen their borders and territoria to help us combat such issue.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hayford. Let me quickly refer or put these information to our listeners. In fact, Mr. Gomen, last year, somewhere May last year, there was a senator from Nigeria that was arrested together with a wife and a doctor in the United Kingdom. He was arrested for trafficking or transporting a young gentleman from the street of Nigeria to UK under the pretense of giving him good living condition, and then they promised him £7,000. Now, it was established that this senator, who, if in Ghana we say is a member of parliament, which is an MP, was actually they were actually trafficking the boy to harvest his kidney for a transplant.
Yes.
I think it was the doctor that was assigned to do the transplant that drew the attention of law enforcement in the UK. He, together with a wife and a doctor from Nigeria, was subsequently arrested and imprisoned. Now, I'm talking about a situation where we have people in power, people who are supposed to know better, people who are supposed to make laws to mitigate these things from happening. They are practicing it. How safe are we in the hands of individuals or people we have given power? How safe are we? Because if they can protect us and they are doing what the criminals are doing, then how safe are we?
George, indeed, that question begs to be asked. Because if a senator, like you rightly put it, in my country, that would be a member of parliament, these are basically lawmakers. These are people we've entrusted with the responsibility of ensuring our welfare. If they are at the center of such a scam, it begs so many questions to be asked. However, we should not lose hope. I think what is very critical is that whenever we seem to have what seems like a golden opportunity to go out there and do something better, it's important that we widely share with our loved ones. And there are certain people that we may go to that we could confide in, that at least we trust in our lives. Could be our spiritual leaders, could be our sisters, some may be widely shared, George. I think we stand a better chance of getting to prevent and avoid some of these unsuspecting individuals that will take advantage of unsuspecting victims. So indeed, I think it's also very important that when an opportunity is presented, let us do a bit more research. Let us find out about, let's do some due diligence. We have our local enforcement officers. I don't want to say, no, it's not possible because I'm under-resourced to get to find out who these people are. I'd like to bring it to attention, George. I'm in private practice, but I work very closely with our state enforcement agency, particularly the police and a few other wings. They do have the manpower, they do have information, they do have the capacity to cross-check some of this information before we even get to involve ourselves. So my encouragement is, please avail this information to the relevant authorities within your areas of jurisdiction. And they'll be very helpful in giving you some guidance and some information that will help you make a better informed a decision.
Session. Thank you. I think we do have Mr. Agbesi, who is a law enforcement officer. He's an anti-human trafficking investigator as well, with a lot of experience handling such cases in Ghana. Before I bring him to the show and then put his question across to him, let me quickly share these statistics. If I mentioned earlier on that according to the United States, the United Nations, these criminals, which is the human trafficking gang, make about $150, $150 billion in a year as profit. That means that that is minus the expenses they make. And most often these things, the victims, majority of these things are people who are from the continent of Africa. And if you check the statistics, they are saying that one of the key reasons why the human traffickers usually will pick Africa as the destination to transport people from one end to another is simply because of some few reasons. One, socioeconomic issues. The fact that even on the continent of Africa, we have graduates unemployed as an association. And all over the social media platform, it's been announced that there is lack of job. And so sometimes what these people does is that they come to the continent of Africa disguised as travel and tour agency. Sometimes they may come that, okay, there are job offers in Qatar, there are job offers in Singapore, there are job offers in other countries. What they intend doing is that they sometimes might not even need someone with experience. They're just looking for someone who is healthy. If they are into sex, which is prostitution, that they also get a lot of money from, they may look for women that are between the ages of 20 to 28. If they are looking for organs to harvest, they may be looking for people who are between the age bracket of 22 to 30 years. I can't remember, I think 4 years ago, I interviewed a man who was trafficked out of this country. And then, according to him, he was trafficked when he was 29 years. At the time they actually asked him to return back to his country, he has clocked 55 years. And according to him, he served, did I say served? Yes, he spent most of his 25 years in hard labor, which means he was working on a fishing boat day and night. And at a point when they were done with him, that is when they pushed him offshore and he had the opportunity to come back and reunite with his family, with his life wasted. Like Mr. Gomez said, sometimes when these people have the opportunity to travel, and because majority of Africans are interested in sitting in aeroplanes and getting to a different destination, these people take advantage of these things. And once you get to your final destination, most often what they do by experience is to seize your passport and confine you to a room where most often there are language barrier, so you can't even go anywhere to tell anyone else what is happening. I'll go to Ms. Agbesi. Mr. Agbesi is a law enforcement officer. He's an investigator or handling human trafficking issue. I just want to ask him, what are some of the cases that you have come across? And why aren't we eliminating these sort of threats from our environment?
Mr. George, thank you very much. Sorry for joining you late. Sorry. Human trafficking, I've encountered a lot, ranging from labor, sex, and mostly labor and sex trafficking. That is mostly that occur in our sub-region here. And particular is the reason why me I've seen it difficult to combat it. It's just that the economic situation that we find ourselves, the economic downmelt that is across the region, that is across. If I mean the region, Volta, I mean Africa and beyond. And so our people, or in Africa, we seems to think everything that preached to us to be good. So they are, if somebody comes to them that I have a shop, for instance, somebody may go to Nigeria and they recruit people and say, "Well, I have a shop." You got even 20 years or 19 years can really go to Nigeria and they said, "Oh, I have a shop. I have a shop in Ghana. Please come and work in it for me." And returning to Ghana, you are turned into a sex addict where they take the money and wait from it. So, like in the short term, if human trafficking can be fought, yeah, I've been saying we can reduce it, but it must take the willpower of our leaders, our governments, our authorities. If they develop the economic downwell for everybody to get, I don't think a lot of people may want to go out. Because even situations where educated people, the nurses, doctors, pastors, teachers, are falling victims to this crime, are falling victims to this organized crime. And it's real, and it is happening every day. Your own father, your own relatives, your own friend that you trusted so much can be an agent of human trafficking. So in short, we must all be careful. As you said it, we must all be careful at what we hear. Any offer that comes to us, we must look into it before we act on it.
Thank you, Mr. Agbesi, for that input. Quickly, let me go to Mr. Gomez. Mr. Gomez, what are some of the factors that you think drives human trafficking? And then what most often are the modes through which we have human traffickers luring their victims? For example, I know that in the age of, we are in the technological age, and so therefore some of these human traffickers have been reported using social media as a means of getting to their victims. Like Mr. Agbesi mentioned, some would say, I have a shop in Accra, so come and work. I have a shop in Qatar, so I need a sales girl. And they use social media to place a lot of adverts. What are other modes that we have these victims being lured through?
Thank you, George. You see, human trafficking and the traffickers themselves. First of all, I like to refer to it's one of the biggest cartels in terms of businesses going on globally right now. It's probably second to the drug trafficking because some of these victims actually are used in the process. But you see, first and foremost, this is they are known for act of coercing or transporting people. So social media has become one of the most easiest and appealing platforms that these traffickers are using. And what they are doing is that when they have a target group, for instance, they want young people, in this case, probably student range, and they will put up appealing adverts or opportunities per se, purported to be happening in an area or a part of a region or a part of the world. And a lot of these unsuspecting victims will then begin to respond. And unfortunately, some of the unfortunate ones will end up falling prey. These are scholarships. We have a situation that I was actually privy to that actually happened. It was a young lady from one of our neighboring countries that was actually taken to one of the countries in Asia. And she was promised a job. When she got there, unfortunately, she ended up becoming a victim. And because they got her a temporary visa, which was just like 6 months. And within that 6 months, they oriented her into this practice. They had grabbed her passports and everything. At the end of her period, now they threatened her. Look, either we kill you or you just get to succumb and pay your debt. And remember, when you came here, we incurred so much. So she ended up arriving with a debt that she was forced to get to work for. Now, she finished paying her so-called debt, whatever it was. And now they returned her passport back to her. This is a passport that is past due. The visa has expired. The first thing you tell her, once authorities find you, you're going to be in trouble. So, in short, they made her seem they were the only hope. And she got back to them. So, the point was, the condition was, will you bring us one more victim or girl and bring another one to start your business? So, we'll now get you to become part of the ring. So this young lady, after 6 months of a horrific experience, a human mind, a human being is quite dynamic. She kind of acclimatized and felt my best way out is to play along with these people and just to start doing it. It's at this point that one of my colleagues, who's a private investigator, got wind of her situation. And that is how a private circuit was put in. And the matter was now being tracked. And she agreed to play along with the investigators. So she agreed, say, I will start. So now the conditionality is that if she played along and agreed to work with the traffickers, what would have happened was she was going to call her friends back in that African country and assure them that she was doing well and she had a place where they could arrive. And this is how one of the ways that these traffickers are actually luring most of African young ladies that they are taking. So it's through socioeconomic gratification and promises and assuring them of a better life and future, and using people very close to them who once they've been victims and converted to their agents.
Thank you for that information and insightful revelation. So we're learning that one of the ways that these criminals are able to recruit their victim is through social media. And then again, they can also recruit through another person, especially for those of us who are prominent in our various society. We are being used on daily basis to recruit people, but we might have no idea. Let me go and speak to somebody who is on the ground and then has been handling these issues. Mr. Iford, let me ask you, you deal specifically with child trafficking and then specifically within a certain region in Ghana. The question I have for you is that how are these victims, which is the children, trafficked? How are they recruited? Is it that their parents willingly give them out, sells them to these traffickers, or they lure them using other methods?
Thank you, Mr. George. Uh, Issues about child trafficking in Ghana here, most of the times, how the children go to the lake is this. Some relative sold their children to the slave masters and middlemen. Some of them too, they lure them with giving them a better education, giving them a better life. So they also become convinced and they gave out their children to the slave masters and middlemen without having any idea of where his or her child is going to stay with or going. So when it comes to the children's side, this is how they are able to get their children to use them on the
Okay.
lake.
Thank you very much. I'll go to Mr. Agbesi. Mr. Agbesi, as an investigator handling some of these issues, the ones you come across, what are some of the um, ways that these traffickers use during these innocent victims from a practical perspective? Can you also share yours with us?
Okay, so thank you. As he rightly said that they promise to give them better education. And then another thing that they normally do is that what I observed recently, that he spoke about the lake, so maybe let me talk about the farm activities or our brothers at the northern part of Ghana who deceive them that these boys are maybe 10 and above, or sometimes 8 and above, that they are coming to work in vegetable farms in the south. And at the end, they end up in the cannabis farms. That is another area where that is, they end up in the cannabis farm working. So that is one particular. So some did from the top, the northern part down, and within our coastal area, to as we rightly said, it will interest you to know that a family member who is there at the the lake working will send his kids or children down to their hometown. Maybe probably let me say the source community where he is coming from, but rather pick victims from the source community and send them to their destination point. That's the lake, with the promise of that going to help, because they are not getting adequate source, adequate funding or adequate food or whatever it is in there. So even some people, I know of a case that we handle, that these parents have 5 kids and they've given out 2. They voluntarily given out 2 and take some money to take care after the rest.
Okay.
And at the end, it all boiled down to economic hardship. All boiled down to economic hardship. That's all that.
Okay. So in other words, if we are interested as a nation or as a continent to mitigate the threat posed by human trafficking, we have to make sure that there is enough job for everybody within our various countries. Is that one
Yes,
of the
yes,
ways?
yes. If you mean to mitigate it, there must be a way. Government must make a job available, as you rightly said, for everybody. Or there must be
Okay.
the fisher force must be educated on how not to be like, because sometimes I don't understand, because sometimes when I get to them, it's like they don't care about whatever they does to those kids. They don't know, they don't care about it at all. But that's how I say the most interesting is that they rather send their kids to school in different community by using others' phone.
I want to strongly believe that it is the power of money and authority, and
Sure.
everybody wants their kids to do better. So once they have the resources to make sure they pick someone else, they will do that. Now let's shift the conversation from the local, which is the urban to urban. Now let's go to the regional base. We have few minutes. Again, let me quickly say that those of you who are watching us live on Facebook and then on YouTube, you can leave your questions under the comment section and our guests will answer them. You can also do us a favor by sharing these to your various platforms so that it can get to a wider audience. Again, let us know where you are watching us from and then we will acknowledge you. My question to Mr. Gomez, what are the challenges specific to cross-border human trafficking within Africa? Is it that our law enforcement agencies within the various borders and even at the entry and exit points of each country are not able to profile and identify victims that are being transported, or what exactly is the challenge?
George, the challenge is pretty common to the many areas we've tackled before in this program. Capacity issues tend to take the greater part of it. A lot of our African governments now are pretty keen to tackling various forms of crime. Of course, human trafficking being amongst them. But issues of capacity are pretty real, that you realize even when you do find out and inquire from a lot of these local law enforcement agencies in a good number of African countries. If you look at what capacity building is going on right now, vis-a-vis bringing the law enforcers up to speed to current trends of crime, the progression is rather pretty slow. So one of the greatest strengths that now Africa has within the private sector, I think there's quite a lot of resource. George, if you may wish to know, that is able to gather a lot of intel very professionally and efficiently, that is able to locate a lot of these victims, conduct very specialized investigation because they're quite resourced. So with collaboration, and this is, I think, one of the biggest issues, there isn't much collaboration between the private and the public sector. Usually we tend to have whatever rivalries at times we may call them for whatever reason, not realizing that the cause and the need, and we're all fighting for one. The cartels, by the way, George, are very, very organized, even at international level, because they know exactly what they want to achieve. So their collaboration is extremely organized. So if we could do and have the same done with our local law enforcement agencies, incorporating, of course, vetting and all that is very important, but I believe there's a lot of resource. I always keep referring to Doyen as a great example. It's coming from an actual active service platform. George, by the way, I've had over 15 years of active service participation in enforcement before I went into consultancy. So we're not speaking from different platforms, but if we collaborated better, I think we would do a lot better as Africa.
As an African. Thank you. Shortly, I'll go to the questions being asked by our viewers, but let me talk about a situation that may be relevant in other African countries. I have worked at the airport as an interdicting officer, specifically on drug profiling. But we've come across, or I have come across, incidents where we have immigration officers. You know, immigration officers are supposed to be those that detect some of these human trafficking victims and then stop them from even traveling. But we've encountered cases where we have immigration officers identifying that this person is just 17, 18, 20 years old, and the person have no idea of where he or she is traveling to. And if you do further profiling, the person is saying, oh, somebody purchased the ticket for me, somebody got the visa for me, I'm going to meet the person in Saudi Arabia. And you go on to ask questions, do you even know this person? He said, no, we met over the internet. He said he has a job for me. But yet we have immigration or certain officers detailed at the entry and exit point of countries, okay, that are supposed to make sure that individuals like these are not allowed to exit the country without proper things being done. But we have officers who just take money. Once they take the money, we know of $100, $50, $200, then you go and sit in your flight and you go away. How can we, as law enforcement, and this goes to Mr. Agbesi, how can we, as law enforcement officers, I have done my best in the past, but when I identify those things, I draw the attention of those that are supposed to take the action, which is the immigration services. I have had instances where I profiled someone that I think was underage. His passport, date of birth, everything was changed to, I assume that she's 18 years, but you could tell from physical appearance that this person is 16 or 17. And she was heading to a country that she knows nobody. There's going to be a language barrier. Even the person she's going to meet, she has no idea of the person. I refer her to the immigration service to let them know that this is a possible human trafficking incident. But to your surprise, within 30 minutes, the lady met me again at my control point. I asked her what happened. She said money was taken from her, and then they allow her to go. We have taken an oath of office to make sure we protect life and property. What is happening to law enforcement agencies that have been mandated to identify and mitigate this? Mr. Agwezi, what's happening to your people?
So, say what is happening to our people? I mean, entire Africa is something that is everywhere. What is happening to our people, or what is happening to us? So it's one particular thing that myself I've been thinking of all the time. I happened to travel to Egypt some time ago, and at the airport, what you said, I observed it myself.
Okay.
So when I attempted questioning, what I was told is that they are Ghanaian, they acquire every document that will enable them to travel. They have, so there's nothing they can do. Well, myself, I was traveling, so I can't activate anything. Another interesting thing is that this one, at the beginning, where they start their process, I noticed something in one of our passport processing centers. So I gone there and realized this young girl that you were saying, who could not even speak English language, were being taken through the process to acquire passports. So when I begin to work, what I was told is that they are Ghanaian. Well, as you said, rightly said, if you ask them, why are you acquiring passport? They can't tell you anything. They can't. They just said, oh, I was selling cocoa with my, I was with somebody selling cocoa, and the person said I should come and do passports. So the question you ask myself, I've been thinking about it.
Sorry to cut you there, but Mr. Agwezi, in instance like that, where so let's say that those people that handle passports falls under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and then of course under the Ghana Immigration Service. Now you are trained as an officer to identify things like this. We all learn profiling, and we must practice profiling in our workplaces. So once you profile these individuals and you realize that there are information gaps, something is not making sense, can't we, as law enforcement officers, okay, say, okay, even though you are a Ghanaian, you have the right to do this, you have your passport, you have your visa, you have your ticket, but I, as a law enforcement officer, after my profiling, I realized that where you are going, something else is going to happen to you that your country is going to pay for. And so I'm not going to allow you to travel. I had to confront an immigration officer the other time, and I told him, listen, the fact that somebody have a passport and you have purchased your own ticket and you have a valid visa, it does not guarantee that when you get to the airport, you will travel. No. The immigration officer, including other officers, have what it takes after further profiling to say that where you are going, we are not convinced. And so therefore, you go home, let's do further verification. What is preventing law enforcement from doing that, from taking that initiative? Because if you look at the cross-border human trafficking incident, it's not only happening within the countries. We have a lot. Go to the airport today, you realize that a lot of the young ones, the youth, are leaving the country to countries that our country may be doing far better than. You live in Ghana, and you are heading to Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, I mean, other countries. And sometimes we don't hear from them. There is an incident within the media that has been carried out by TV3 in Ghana, where we have some people sent to Russia. I don't know if you are following that issue. They are currently in Russia. They said they were going to give them, is it agriculture jobs? Today, they have been given weapons to be in the war front of fighting. So, what is happening to law enforcement? Is it corruption? Is it I don't really care about the people I've taken an oath to protect any longer? Mr. Gomez, in your experience, what is our problem?
George, you've rightfully put it. I think it starts with us as individuals. You take oath and you pledge allegiance, and you need to stand by the oath that you took. The situation I shared earlier on, it actually it's a colleague who stood up, was not on duty, but had the ability to profile. And when he profiled, he just couldn't walk away from that incident. So he tried to activate law enforcement within that region. They were not very helpful. He ended up getting access to the victim. Fortunately, the victim was willing. She wanted to go home, but because she was locked up in that scenario where her visa had expired and all that, she complied. And George, it was from a private sector that was arranged, that eventually law enforcement agencies ended up picking it up after he had provided enough evidence to show the occurrence. So it can be done. It may not work all the time, but let's at least having tried and it doesn't work, as opposed to not making any effort and we keep seeing this vice perpetrating.
Well, anyway,
can I come in?
Yes, Mr. Agwesi, you can come in briefly, then I will
Just briefly, yes. So what I want to say, with a partnership with the private sector for more education, because I realize more security officers don't know what entails when you talk of human trafficking. So with that, with education, maybe one day we'll see improvement in the area that we are pinpointing now.
But is it not the case that human trafficking is doing a lot of damage to us, now, than waiting 10 years to start doing education? I strongly believe our police services within the continent of Africa have educational units. They have a responsibility to make sure that the threat, which is now, must be communicated to the people. For example, somewhere in 2018-19, Ghana experienced what we call kidnapping, rampant kidnapping situations. What happened is that, yes, it is a situation, it's a security threat at that time. So I strongly believe that all the security agencies must come on board and then educate. But we hardly saw that. Now we have a situation of human trafficking where we have our own being transported out of this country for whatever reason, and they are being used for whatever reason. Is it not the case that enough is enough for law enforcement agencies to lead the awareness creation? Must it always be the private sector? So I think Mr. Gomez have given the answer to that, that sometimes it has to do with resources.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes, I just want to come in on this issue that we are talking about concerning the security. Mr. George, I can remember somewhere 2014, I work on about, let's say, 14 cases who are involved in child trafficking from some part of central region to the Bunu East. Mr. George, to your surprise, out of 14 people, the traffickers, only 2 people were convicted. So I later told myself that even whenever I have such issue, I will not report to the police. What I will do is that I will intervene. I will rescue the children. rehabilitate them, reintegrate them to their parents, and I've done my part. You
But you
see,
see,
sometimes it's very painful. Sometimes it's very painful. You do all whatever that you think you can do when report the case to the Ghana police or even the security service. They will tell you tomorrow, today this, tomorrow this, tomorrow this. Mr. George, in fact, it's sometimes very worried and very pathetic.
I think
Sometimes very worried and very pathetic.
Mr. Effort, I understand your situation. I know how frustrating things can be sometimes when you have a passion to do something, and then those that are supposed to aid you are not. I know how painful it can be. But these are, let's also be, well, we can't say all the policemen. I think that there are some
Oh
that
yes.
still have
Oh yes.
in ensure that the right thing is done. Okay, so I think that we only have about 7 minutes. Let me quickly go to the questions. We do have a question coming from Mr. Michael. Okay, let me quickly go through this first. Amafiye said is watching from live from Pokriasi. We have Michael Soriba Kamara watching us live from Sierra Leone. We have Possible watching us live from Patoy, that is in the Volta region of Ghana. Then we have Stephen Villa watching us live from Pokriasi. We have George who have a question. Okay, so Mami Ipia is also watching us from the Volta region of Ghana. I'll go to the rest later on. But Mr. Michael Soriba from Sierra Leone do have a question. And his question is, what is the motivation for Africans trafficking their own African brothers and sisters? Should I answer this one, or one of you want to take it? I think that yes.
I guess if well, I would say usually it's mostly a socioeconomic motivation, financial gain.
Exactly.
It's a biggest, and you tend to realize at the time it's not just because people lack, but I think we've built a certain level of greed, which again brings us back to our cultural orientation. I think we are losing our cultural heritage, and as a result, we begin to throw away certain intrinsic values, and that's we get taught as we are young. And money was not the epitome of those values. But we are now in a situation where we've lost our values. We think Africa is backward, and therefore everything to do with Africa is not. So we pick all these things from across the world. And at the end of the day, money becomes the center, which unfortunately is leading to a lot of these unfortunate occurrences.
Thank you very much. So the answer to the question is money, greed. Everybody wants to make money quickly. So that is the reason why most of our brothers are trading their brothers and sisters. Greetings to my brother, Mr. Gome, and the team. Mr. Agbesi Lache Nupo is a mate, both at the police training school and then UCC. I love the discussion so far. That is coming from Mr. Ahantan, our guest. But he has been on the show consistently, but today he is not with us. Then I go to Mr. Smith Banda. Mr. Smith Banda is watching us from Malawi. Then I have Mami Ikia Adipa. Thank you, Doyan Institute of Intelligence and Investigation, and your team for the education. We have Ngologo watching us from Kontonga, Gome State. I don't know the country, but then there's a question from DI. Does Ghana have an agency that is solely responsible for making sure that these activities, such as human trafficking crimes, don't work out? Is there, Mr. Agbesi, is there a dedicated agency for fighting human trafficking, just like the way we have the Narcotics Control Commission that is fighting drugs? We have the organized crime, economic and organized crime, that is fighting corruption at the economic level. Is there any agency specialized in handling human trafficking cases alone?
Okay, so if we come to government institutions, anti-human trafficking units, anti-human trafficking desk or office at the Ministry of Gender and Social Protection. They are the motherhead, they spearhead everything So they coordinate all the security services in fighting human trafficking. So yes, they coordinate all the security services. As you rightly mentioned, police, immigration, Yoko, steps, here and there, all the security, most of the security services are now on board on one platform now. We have a common platform where discussions being discussed. Or if you are having issue in handling the cases, if you put it there, you get response quick. Yes, across the country, we are there.
Okay, thank you very much. So it means that if you're in Ghana and you have any human trafficking cases, the most appropriate agency to go to is the Ministry of Gender and Children Protection.
No. You see, if you say so, we deprive people from reporting cases. Okay. Because Minister of Gender is far away in Accra or maybe the regional capitals.
So I know
if you have any issue.
Yes, I know the Ghana Police Service have an anti-human trafficking unit.
Yes.
I suppose report to that unit, which is the Ghana Police Service.
Yes. Okay. Yes. But you see, when we limit it to these two institutions you mentioned, we will not get a lot of this. So, situation where maybe certain communities where cases are detected by individuals, and maybe police station may not be close to them. So I will advise that, I will advocate that whenever you in your community, when you detected this crime being perpetrated by some people, please report to the opinion leaders. Assembly members are there, chiefs are there, pastors are there. Report to them, and at the end, it will end with any of the security services. Now, let me chip in this quickly. A lot of NGOs are organizing capacity building for the security services across the board. But that's how come we are all in one page now, one platform now. So you don't need necessarily report to police where there's no police. If you see immigration officer, if you see fire service, if you see prison, self, military, reports to them. Then from there, they'll carry it from there.
Okay, so I think that I can share, in fact, I can second what you are saying, or I can confirm it. I think about 2 months ago, one of my men, he's he's a deputy operations manager for Doyen Institute of Intelligence and Investigation. They were working on a private case, what we call private investigation, and they met a young lady, think about 15, 16 years, who is a Nigerian. And then she confided in them that she was brought into the country to do prostitution. But she's tired and she doesn't want to do it. So she has run away from her madam's home. And she doesn't know where she is currently. So when they phoned in, I told them what is the nearest security point. They mentioned immigration service is closer. So they escorted the lady to the immigration service, handed her over to the immigration boss. The following day, they went to write their statement. So yes, I think I can second and confirm what Mr. Agbesi is saying, that you can as well report it to any of the security agencies and they can be of help. So someone is asking again, this is coming from DI. Do we do we have private sector that goes undercover to catch these criminals? Private company, for example, in the US, we have Homeland Security that protect internal security. Yes, in Ghana or in other countries, we do have, in Ghana, we have what you call the Ministry of Interior that is responsible for internal security, where we have the Ghana Police Service, the immigration, all of them falling under the Ministry of Interior. When you go to countries like Zambia, I'm sure they have, is it Homeland?
We have the Minister of Home Affairs that is in charge.
Yes. So I think in Zambia it's Home Affairs, and so they are responsible for these things. Let me move on to the next question. Lack of collaboration, cooperation between the security agency, lack of transparency and accountability, inability of society learning from previous cases. This is coming from Ohini Nana Afari Deborah. I think he's trying to tell us why we are behind the fight so far against human trafficking, simply because there is lack of collaboration. But like Mr. Agbesi have mentioned, now there are collaboration between those agencies, and then we should be seeing progress any moment from now. I can agree there's more to be done though. Ohini Deborah for financial gains. Okay, so I think good presentation from all the panelists. This is coming from Haris Ben Alpha, who is a police officer himself. DI is watching from Ghana. We have the woman TW. Good evening, gentlemen. I couldn't have missed this program for anything. Thank you for what you're doing. And this is coming from TW woman. Amefria says, how would we be able to detect that an online company or a school who grants scholarship are real, since there are so many schools in the world? I must, Mr. Gomen, would you want to take that? Or
Okay.
So she's asking, how would we be able to detect and that an online company or school who grants scholarship or are real, since there are so many schools in the world? I personally do have an experience, so please go ahead. Then afterwards, I share mine briefly.
One thing that yes, thank you so much, George. I think at times we do underutilize our resources and our governments. One thing we need to realize that within international relations, we do have missions spread pretty much across the globe. And it's very, very important that if you do not have information on a particular place, go to your local authorities, that basically Minister of Foreign Affairs. If you are in I believe every country will have that as a standard. In my country, Foreign Affairs, you go to Foreign Affairs, they'll be able to contact the mission that is within the domicility of that institution, and they're able to verify on a very local basis, and hence get that information. And this is free inquiries that these government institutions will offer to anybody that is willing to get that information.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gome. I think you have thrown more light on it. The same way, I think about, was it last year, we had someone who walked to our office, and the person had an appointment letter from a company in Canada. He has been recruited, and then he has been asked to make payment so that they can process his visa for him. So he brought the appointment letter so we could authenticate it. The first thing we did was to call the Canadian embassy. Instead of the Foreign Affairs, we called the Canadian embassy and said, there's this company. The moment we mentioned the name of the company, they said it's a scam.
Yeah.
So it's also important that these embassies are in our countries for a reason, and you can always make some inquiries for them. Of course, they gather information, they gather intelligence, they know which organizations that are fictitious back home, and so they have them on the red alert. So it's very important that when situations like that come up, you can cross-check. Again, if it's so difficult for you to do, you can always contact, if you are in Ghana, you can always contact Doyen Institute, and we have a lot of investigators that will be able to do that for you within the shortest possible time. If you are not, you can get in touch with any of the agency, or still get in touch with Doyen, and we can sort that out for you. The TW woman is watching us from the Western region in Ghana. I think that these are the key comment questions that have come through from our viewers across the continent of Africa. And then before I come to each one of you for your last words, let me share these with our viewers. What you are seeing is a 2015 figures of how much your body organs are worth in that year. And this figure is specific to Singapore. As you can see, cornea was being sold at that time for $30,000. The heart was being sold minimum $130,000. Kidney was being sold at 62,000 US dollars for one, and the list goes on and on and on. This figure is also coming from Singapore in 2015. We have human organ, kidney, candidate on waiting list. It means that we have 99,909 people on the waiting list for a kidney transplant in 2015 at the time this was being released. That will tell you that if I'm a human trafficker that is into organ harvesting, and pick one person from Zambia, one person from Botswana, one person from Kenya, one person from Ghana, and I transport the person out of this country and I spend, let's say, $1,000 to do the transportation, and the person gets to the final destination and I kill the person and harvest the person's organ. I want you to calculate how much you think I am making in one person. Human traffickers, most motivation is money, wealth. And so, therefore, let's stay secure and share the information we have acquired today. So, before I leave, quickly, let me start with Mr. Hayford. What is your advice to parents and then to children, since you deal more with child trafficking?
Thank you, Mr. George. My advice to the parents is uh, some of the parents are ignorant about what their children gone through when they found themselves on the lake. Some of psychological trauma that the children goes through on the lake. So I will advise the parents that they should do everything possible to live with their kids, no matter how the economic situation is. They should not also believe the relative so much of their honey promises and other stuff. They should make sure, whatever the condition is, they should try as much as possible to live with their own children.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hayford, for your final word. I go to Mr. Agbesi. Uh, Kindly do advise our listeners and give them your final word.
Okay, so my advice to our listeners is very simple. As you right said, that somebody who had a job offer in Canada and have to come to your office for quick checkup, and he was very lucky that it turned out that it's a scam. I would advise everybody to do so. Don't just say because of situation we find ourselves, as they are saying the economy is hard or whatever, and because of that, any information that comes to you quick, then you move. No, I want to say that everybody is vulnerable. Don't trust yourself. Yes, I have an yes. I said so because there are so many cases that sometimes I assisted in maybe some bringing them. Some are pastors, teachers, people educated. Have been trafficked out of our countries and they don't know. Even to the extent, okay, another thing that I want to know is that it is not only our people going outside the world, they are also coming here. I'm feeling simple. Let me say this thing. People are also coming down here, serving people. They brought some people down there and work in Ghana, other countries. So let us all be careful, whatever we hear. We are not saying don't go outside to go and look for greener pastures. No, go. But before you go, do due diligence to know the authenticity of where you are going. On us, after getting down to the last destination, when they get you in that withholding house, then that's the beginning of your.
Thank you very much, Mr. Agbesi, for your final words. I'll go to Mr. Gomez. Kindly do give us your final word and your general advice to our listeners.
Thank you so very much, George. I think I need to underscore that trust alone is not enough. Always work on doing the due diligence. I think some of practical steps have been given right here. Um, you are being invited and assured to go to a place you've never been before. Make use of those chancelleries, those embassies, those consulates. There may be areas that may not have them. We do have government offices that are related to foreign service. Uh, Go there, have somebody who's an expert help you do the due diligence. But if you have an embassy of whatever destination you're heading to within your vicinity, they'll be more than glad to help you. George, we cannot overemphasize this aspect. I think it's one aspect we need to start from as Africans. Verify, extremely important.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gomez, for your final words. Again, verify. It's something that we need to continue echoing into the minds of the African as well. This is where we bring the curtains down on today's section. We thank each one of you for taking time out of your tight schedule to join us. Join us again next week for another important discussion on a different topic. To our guests who took time to join us, we are grateful, and hopefully next week we'll see you on the show again. Bye-bye for now.